Hey guys, welcome to Living the Logic. This is Manish Narayan, and today we're going to talk about .NET 8 microservices using Redis on a local hosted Docker container, and then setting up your .NET 8 Web API microservice to talk to Redis. All right, so let's get started. The very first thing is to create a new project in Visual Studio 2022. So I'm going to create a new Web API. All right, you're going to choose ASP.NET Core Web API, click on Next, and then let's go ahead and rename this. I'm going to put it in C:development, and we'll say Redis Tester. Okay, and then we'll just call this our Redis Test API. All right, I'll click on Next. I'll leave the .NET 8 framework as the default and the rest of the configurations. I'll click on Create. All right, so it's going to set up our .NET 8 Web API, which comes with a controller for retrieving weather forecast data. All right. So once that's ready, what you're going to do is head over to Docker Desktop. Depending on your operating system, you want to install the latest version of Docker Desktop. All right. You can go ahead and download Docker Desktop. Once you have Docker installed, you'll see a window something like this where you can create an account with Docker, a free account, and you'll see containers, images, volume. So right now we don't have any images. We're going to start to pull the Redis image in a second. So again, this is Docker Desktop I'm using. All right. And then once we pull Redis and run Redis locally on localhost on a Docker container, we want to be able to visualize the cache that's in our Redis store, right? So I'm using Redis Insight, so you can actually download that. It's called Redis Insight, and I'll provide the links in the video description. Again, feel free to use any other tool. There are plenty of Redis tools out there. So I'm using Redis Insight, and again, Docker Desktop. All right. So what we're going to do is head over to our Visual Studio Web API that we just created. Let's just make sure it launches. So I'm going to hit play here. All right, that should start up the .NET 8 command prompt and then bring up a Swagger page for our weather API. Okay, let me wait for the web page to come up. And in the meantime, I'll bring over the command prompt here. It's launched. All right, there we go. It's going to be running on port 7270 for HTTPS. And we have our Redis test API. I can grab the weather forecast, hit the getter, click on execute, and I should get a list of temperatures, conditions, and weather forecast. All right. So our API is running. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. So I'll close the window. And what I'll do is close this welcome page. And we're going to go ahead and pull Redis using Docker. So what you want to do is head over to a terminal. You can use PowerShell or command prompt, either one. I'm going to open up a developer command prompt. Okay, and it should open up to your Redis test API. Now, you can be in any directory for this as long as you have Docker installed. So I'm going to run docker pull Redis. Okay, so it's going to get the latest image from Docker. All right, and once it's done pulling Docker, you're going to actually run the Redis on a local host. Okay, so notice everything's complete there. And then I'm going to run docker run. Okay, and then we'll give it a name and we'll just call it Redis. And the port will be 6379 by default for Redis. So 6379. Okay, and then we'll just say Redis to run the command. All right, if that works out, if you open up your Docker desktop, you should see a container running. Beautiful. It's running on port 6379, and the image is called Redis, and the name is Redis. Okay, so once you have that up and running, you should be able to open up your Redis, add Redis database. We'll say default localhost 6379. We'll add database. Okay, should be able to connect to our localhost using Redis Insight. All right, we have no data stored in there, and that's what we're going to work with next. All right, so what you want to do is open up your Visual Studio again, your web API. first thing to do is set up your app settings. So I'm going to go ahead and close this terminal. Let me just zoom in there. All right, you're going to add cache settings here for your app settings. Another JSON entry. Okay. And in the cache settings, we're going to have a key called the connection string so we can connect to Redis Cache. And that's going to be running on localhost port 6379. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save that. All right, next we want to take care of the pipeline through the injection. So we're going to head over to Program.cs. All right, and you can add a section for Redis. So what we'll do is before we build the container, right? So what we'll say is var. Let's just add a comment here. We'll say this is Redis. We'll say var Redis configuration equals builder dot configuration, and we can grab the connection string here. So we'll say cache settings connection string. Okay, and then what we're going to do is actually grab a variable for Redis itself. So we'll use a connection multiplexer. Okay. All right. Now, if it complains, we need to add the package. All right. So notice it prompts me to install stack exchange.redis. We'll get the latest version from NuGet. All right. Once we get the connection multiplexer, we can actually go ahead and connect using our configuration. All right, and then we'll add it to our .NET 8 services, .add singleton, and we'll say I connection multiplexer. All right, and we'll pass in the Redis. All right, so that's all for the integration of Redis through the .NET Web API. All right, so let's see how we can take advantage of injecting our Redis cache database in our Web API. All right, so what I can do is head over to the weather forecast controller. All right, and what I'll do is I'll make the getter here async. We'll say async task. All right, and here we'll just say task IEnumerable weather forecast. Okay, and what we'll do is once we'll add this range of weather forecasts to a variable here. So we'll say var weather forecasts equals. All right, and what we'll do is we'll store that in our cache. All right, so what we need to do is inject our Redis database into our controller. So what I'll do is add another private read-only iDatabase, and we'll call this the Redis database. Okay, and then we'll store a cache prefix key. All right, so this is so we can quickly retrieve the cache data, right, using a key, a prefix. So we'll say private constant string Redis key prefix equals, and we'll say this is like weather underscore. All right, so every cache entry will have a prefix with a weather underscore. Okay, next I'm going to inject the I connection multiplexer. All right, so we'll say I connection multiplexer, and we'll call this a Redis connection. Okay, and here we'll start to inject. So we'll say Redis database equals Redis connection.get database. Notice how Visual Studio auto-completes that for us. Okay. Once we have the Redis database, I can actually do something like this: var data equals, or actually here we can first serialize. So we'll say var data equals JSON convert. So we'll need this library here from newtonsoft.json. We'll install the latest version. We'll say JSON convert.serialize. So basically, we're going to serialize our object and store it in the Redis cache, right? So we'll serialize the whole weather forecast state object there, and then we'll call await database, Redis database, dot string set async, right? And basically, we're going to append the key, the prefix, so Redis key prefix, and then next to it will be some sort of GUID, right? So we can say GUID dot new GUID, okay? And then here we will, I forgot to add the data. Okay, right. So we need to add the data. So string set, and then we'll add the data, right? So that's data. That's what I forgot. Okay. So I think that looks good. So GUID.new GUID, and then toString. Okay. Let me see if it actually, we may not need toString because yeah, it should automatically convert to a string since we're concatenating, right? The prefix with the GUID string. All right. So now we're going to await Redis database, set the cache, which is going to be our weather forecast. And that's the data that we're serializing, the weather forecast. And then we'll just return weather forecast, okay, to the API method. All right, so let's run this again and see if our Redis cache updates. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit play. Okay, cache setting connection string. Let me see if I have any mistake in there. Oh, I'm missing a comma here. So let's make sure we add a comma in there. We'll stop it and restart it. There we go. All right, so the API is going to start up again. And we're going to go ahead and click on get weather forecast, try it out. Click on execute. All right, it gives me the weather data, and we'll open up our Redis Insight. Look for a key. We'll just search all the keys. There it is, weather underscore, and generate a new GUID there. If I click on that key, notice I get in my cache all the Redis, the weather forecast. All right, so very simple. We got the latest image from Docker of Redis. It's up and running locally on localhost 6379. We connected our web API using Program.cs to talk to Redis. We injected the connection multiplexer inside the controller constructor, and then we're able to get or set the cache, right? So again, if you head back over to your API and go to the controller, you'll have methods in Redis database to even retrieve the cache, which is get string async or string get async, right? And you can get it based on, again, the key, right? So hope this helps you get up and running with Redis and .NET 8 microservices. If you have any questions, just post it in the comment. And I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, if you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. See you next time.